The Unexpected Detour. Penelope Winters squinted at the departures board as the status of her flight to New York flipped from on time to delayed 8 hours. A collective groan rose from the crowd gathered in Lisbon International's Terminal 3. 3 weeks of shooting coastal villages along Portugal's rugged shores had left her with aching feet, thousands of photographs, and a desperate desire for her own bed. "You've got to be kidding me," she muttered, adjusting the heavy camera bag digging into her shoulder. After 15 years as a travel photographer, Penny was no stranger to airport purgatory, but today of all days, she'd hoped for mercy. Her exhibition opened in 2 weeks, and her editor was already sending increasingly panicked messages about deadlines. The nearby coffee shop looked like a refugee camp for the delayed and disgruntled. She spotted one empty table in the corner and made a beeline for it, navigating through a maze of luggage and disappointed travelers. Just as her hand touched the chair back, someone else approached from the opposite direction. "Looks like we had the same idea," said a voice with a slight accent she couldn't quite place. Penny looked up to find a man about her age, early 30s with warm brown eyes and the kind of tan that suggested a life outdoors rather than vacation sunbathing. His curly dark hair was windblown, and the sleeve of his navy blue sweater was unraveling slightly at one cuff. "Please," he gestured to the chair. "Take it. I've been sitting for hours already." "Actually," Penny heard herself say, surprising herself, "why don't we share? Unless you're practicing social distancing from stressed-out photographers." He smiled, the corners of his eyes crinkling. "Only if they're the paparazzi kind. I'm Gabriel Navarro. Friends call me Gabe." Penelope Winters. Penny. They settled into an awkward silence as Penny rummaged through her bag for her phone charger. 8 hours. She could have taken a train halfway across Europe in that time. "Let me guess," Gabe said suddenly. "You're mentally calculating all the productive things you could do in 8 hours instead of being trapped here." Penny looked up, startled by the accuracy. "How did you know?" "You have the look of someone whose time is valuable. Plus, the way you're clutching that planner suggests you're not someone who enjoys surprises in your schedule." She laughed despite herself. "Guilty. Though I wasn't always like this. Deadlines have a way of changing a person." "What kind of photography?" he asked, nodding toward the camera bag she'd placed carefully on the table. "Travel and culture. I specialize in coastal communities. You?" "Marine biology. I've been at a research station off the Algarve coast for the past month, studying octopus populations." He shrugged slightly. "Not as glamorous as photography, I imagine." "Are you kidding? Octopuses are incredible. I spent 3 days last year trying to photograph them in Greece. They're like ghosts. There 1 minute, gone the next." Gabriel's face lit up. "That's exactly what makes them fascinating. Their ability to adapt, to change not just color but texture." He stopped himself. "Sorry, I tend to get carried away." "Don't apologize, enthusiasm is refreshing." Penny found herself smiling, her earlier frustration temporarily forgotten. "So you're heading to Boston, then a ferry to Portland, Maine. My family has a place there." The announcement system crackled to life, and they both looked up expectantly. But it was just information about another delayed flight. "Looks like we're in for the long haul," Gabriel said, glancing at his watch. "I was going to grab some food. Would you like anything?" Penny hesitated. Normally, she used airport delays to edit photos or answer emails. Productive things, just as he'd guessed. But something about Gabriel's easy manner made her reconsider. "Actually, I'll join you. If we're going to be airport cellmates for 8 hours, we might as well get to know each other." As they walked toward the food court, weaving between tired travelers and abandoned luggage, Penny felt something unexpected, a lightness, as if her camera bag had suddenly lost 10 pounds. Perhaps this delay wouldn't be the disaster she'd initially thought. Neither of them noticed when the departure board updated again, adding another hour to their wait time. By then, they were too busy discovering that they had both visited the same tiny cafe in Porto just days apart, the first of many coincidences that would make them wonder later if some invisible thread had been pulling them toward this moment. all along. 8 hours and counting, the airport food court buzzed with the multilingual hum of displaced travelers. Penny and Gabe found themselves at a small table near the window, where rain now pelted the glass, confirming the reason for their extended stay. "So this storm is why we're stuck," Gabe said, unwrapping his sandwich. The flight attendant mentioned, "It's hitting the entire western coast of Europe." Penny nodded, stirring her soup. "My usual luck. I've been chasing perfect weather for 3 weeks, and the storm waits until I'm trying to leave. The ocean gives, and the ocean takes away," Gabe replied with a philosophical shrug. Their conversation flowed easily as they ate, jumping from travel mishaps to favorite destinations. Penny found herself laughing at Gabe's story about accidentally dropping his research equipment into a tide pool and having to negotiate with an indignant octopus for its return. "You're kidding. The octopus actually took your camera?" Penny asked, incredulous. "Not just took it, rearranged my entire setup. When I finally retrieved everything, all my carefully labeled samples were completely reorganized. I swear it was mocking my classification system." Gabe's eyes sparkled as he spoke, hands animated. "I've never met someone who talks about sea creatures the way other people talk about their children," Penny observed. "And I've never met someone who notices the way light falls on fishing nets at sunrise," he countered, referencing something she'd mentioned earlier. A comfortable silence settled between them. Outside, a bolt of lightning briefly illuminated the runway, followed by a rumble of thunder. 6 more hours, Penny sighed, checking the time. "What should we do next? Airport movie marathon on my laptop, or there's always duty-free shopping?" "I have a better idea," Gabe said, standing and offering his hand. "Let's explore." They wandered through the terminal, past shuttered shops and gates where other delayed passengers had created makeshift camps. At a bookstore that was miraculously still open, they played a game. Each would pick out a book they thought the other might enjoy. "Here," Gabe said eventually, handing her a slim volume. "This made me think of you." It was a collection of essays about the intersection of science and art. Penny thumbed through it, stopping at a page with a photograph of bioluminescent plankton. "Perfect choice," she admitted, then handed him her selection. A novel about a deep-sea diving expedition that discovers something unexpected. It's fiction, but the author consulted with marine biologists. I read it last year and kept thinking about it. They purchased their books for each other, a gesture that felt strangely intimate, and continued their exploration, finding themselves in a deserted observation deck overlooking the storm-lashed runways. "It's beautiful in its way," Penny said, lifting her camera. "Do you mind?" Gabe shook his head and she began photographing the rain-streaked windows, the lightning illuminating distant aircraft. When she lowered her camera, she noticed he was watching her with an expression of genuine interest. "What?" she asked, suddenly self-conscious. "You change when you're taking photos. It's like watching someone speak their native language after struggling with translations all day." Penny felt her cheeks warm. "Photography makes sense to me in a way people usually don't. I can frame a perfect shot, but ask me to navigate a cocktail party conversation? I find that hard to believe," Gabe said. "You're easy to talk to. That's because you're not asking me about my 5-year career plan or why I'm still single at 34. The words slipped out before she could stop them. Gabe didn't seem fazed. "Family holiday dinners?" he guessed. "And every wedding I've attended in the last decade," Penny confirmed. "What about you? Do marine biologists get the same treatment?" "Constantly. My mother has given up on grandchildren, and now just asks when I'm going to find a nice girl who doesn't mind the smell of fish." He laughed, but Penny detected something beneath the humor, perhaps a familiar weariness with expectations. "And have you?" she asked lightly. "Found a nice girl who doesn't mind eau de fish?" Gabe's smile turned thoughtful. "Not yet. My work takes me away too often. Most relationships don't survive 3 months of me living on a research vessel with spotty satellite phone service." Penny nodded in understanding. "I spent 218 days on the road last year. My longest relationship was with my Airbnb host in Barcelona, who left me coffee every morning for 3 weeks. They both laughed, recognizing a shared predicament. lives full of extraordinary experiences but missing the ordinary connections most people took for granted. As they walked back through the terminal, they stopped at a small bar where a live band, also stranded travelers, had set up an impromptu performance. The music, a blend of Portuguese fado and jazz, drew a crowd of delayed passengers seeking distraction. "Dance with me?" Gabe asked suddenly as the band shifted to a slower melody. Penny hesitated. "I should warn you, I have 2 left feet, occupational hazard of always being behind the camera." "Perfect compliment to my 2 right feet," he replied with a grin. "We'll balance each other out." And somehow they did. Among the crowd of strangers united by disrupted plans, Penny found herself moving in sync with this man she'd known for only a few hours, yet who already felt familiar. "You know what's strange?" she said as they swayed to the music. "I'm usually counting minutes during delays, working through my to-do list, but I haven't checked my email in hours." "The universe works in mysterious ways," Gabe replied. "Sometimes, what looks like an inconvenience is actually a gift. Are you always this optimistic, or is it the airport wine talking?" "Occupational hazard," he countered. "When you study creatures that have survived for millions of years through countless catastrophes, you develop a certain perspective." The song ended, but they remained standing close together, reluctant to break the moment. An announcement echoed through the terminal. Their delay had been extended by another hour. 9 hours now, Penny said, but the frustration she expected to feel didn't materialize. "I'm starting to think we should thank this storm," Gabe replied, his eyes holding hers. And as they made their way to a cafe for more coffee, Penny realized with surprise that she agreed. For the first time in years, she was exactly where she wanted to be, even if that place was an airport in the middle of a thunderstorm, with a man who studied octopuses and chose perfect books. The world between terminals as midnight approached, Lisbon International took on a dreamlike quality. The main lights dimmed, leaving the terminal bathed in the soft glow of reading lamps and phone screens. Penny and Gabe found themselves sitting on the floor against a wall, their belongings spread around them like castaways' treasures. "Your turn," Gabe said, passing Penny a package of Portuguese pastries they'd bought earlier. "Most beautiful place you've ever been?" Penny considered while biting into a custard tart. "There's this tiny fishing village in Japan, Aini. The houses are built right over the water, with boats tucked underneath like cars in a garage. At sunrise, the whole bay turns golden." She smiled at the memory. "I missed 3 deadlines because I couldn't bear to leave." "Sounds worth it," Gabe replied. "For me, it was diving in the bioluminescent bays in Puerto Rico, swimming through what looks like stars. It's like being in space." Their conversation had taken on the intimate quality that only emerges in the small hours, in liminal spaces like airports where normal rules of time and acquaintance seem suspended. "Can I ask you something?" Penny said, pulling her knees to her chest. "Are you happy with your work? Truly happy?" Gabe looked surprised. "That's quite a midnight question." "Sorry, occupational hazard. I've interviewed enough people to become dangerously direct after 11 p.m. He laughed softly. "It's fine, and yes, mostly. The research fulfills me. But lately," he trailed off, searching for words. "I've been offered a permanent position at the Oceanographic Institute in Boston. Prestigious, secure." "But," Penny prompted. "But it means less field work, more grant writing and administrative duties." He sighed. "My family thinks I'm crazy for hesitating. My father keeps sending me links to condos near the institute." Penny nodded in understanding. "The golden handcuffs." "Exactly. What about you? Are you happy chasing perfect light around the world?" The question hit harder than she expected. Penny found herself confessing things she rarely acknowledged even to herself. How the constant travel had begun to wear on her. How she sometimes looked at people with ordinary lives and felt a pang of longing. "I love my work," she said finally, "but sometimes I wonder if I'm using it to run away from everything else." Neither spoke for a moment, both surprised by the sudden depth of their exchange. "Well," Gabe said eventually, If you ever decide to run toward something instead, I hear the Algarve has excellent opportunities for photographers interested in octopuses." The joke broke the tension, and Penny laughed. "Are you recruiting me, Dr. Navarro?" "Maybe." His smile was warm in the dim light. "Or maybe I'm just not ready for our airport adventure to end." A comfortable silence fell between them. Penny found herself fighting sleep, her head growing heavy. "You can use my shoulder," Gabe offered. "I've been told it makes an adequate pillow." "Just for a minute," she murmured, letting herself lean against him. As she drifted off, Penny had the strange thought that this terminal, this nowhere place between departures and arrivals, felt more like somewhere than many destinations she'd photographed. And the last thing she registered before sleep claimed her was Gabe's hand gently covering hers, warm and steady in the artificial twilight of the terminal. Boarding call. Penny awoke with a start, momentarily disoriented by the fluorescent lights and announcements echoing through the terminal. Her head was still resting on Gabe's shoulder, his jacket draped over her like a makeshift blanket. Morning had arrived, bringing with it the harsh reality of their situation. "Good morning, sleeping beauty," Gabe said, his voice husky with fatigue. "Coffee?" He offered her a paper cup, steam rising invitingly from its lid. Penny accepted it gratefully, trying to ignore how comfortable she'd felt waking up beside him. "What time is it?" she asked, rubbing her eyes. "Just after 6. They've updated the boards. Looks like they're finally getting flights out." Penny felt a strange twist in her stomach. Relief mingled with something that felt uncomfortably like disappointment. She checked the departures screen. Her flight to New York was now scheduled for 7:30 a.m. "When's yours?" she asked, sipping the coffee. 8:15 to Boston. Gabe stretched, wincing slightly. Airport floors aren't kind to 35-year-old spines. They gathered their scattered belongings in silence, each lost in thought. The terminal had come alive again, travelers rushing with renewed purpose, the spell of their shared night broken by the promise of departure. At a nearby restroom, Penny splashed water on her face and attempted to make herself presentable. Her reflection showed smudged mascara and hair that defied gravity in several places. She smoothed it down as best she could, wondering why she suddenly cared how she looked. "Because you like him," she told her reflection. "And in an hour you'll never see him again." The thought hit harder than expected. When had this stranger become someone she didn't want to say goodbye to? Outside, Gabe waited with their bags, looking freshly washed but equally tired. He'd bought them breakfast, more pastries and fruit from a just-opened cafe. "Thought we should have a proper last meal," he said with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Our flight gates are in opposite directions." They found a small table and ate, quietly, the easy conversation of the night before replaced by an awareness of ticking minutes. "So," Penny finally said, "back to reality. Is that what this is?" It felt more real than most things in my life. Gabe's directness caught her off guard. "I know what you mean," she admitted. "Strange, isn't it? One day in an airport with a stranger, don't feel like a stranger anymore," he said quietly. Their eyes met across the table, and Penny felt her professional armor, the protective shell she'd built through years of brief connections and swift departures, begin to crack. "What happens now?" she asked. Gabe took a deep breath. "We could exchange numbers, stay in touch." "And then what?" "I'm based in New York when I'm not traveling. You'll be in Boston or back on research vessels. We both know how these things go." "Do we?" he challenged. "Because I've never met anyone during an airport delay who made me rethink my entire approach to life choices." Penny blinked, startled by his honesty. "Gabe, I'm not proposing," he said with a small laugh. "I'm just saying that I'd like to see where this goes, unless I've completely misread the situation." Before she could answer, the announcement system crackled to life. "American Airlines Flight 372 to New York is now boarding at Gate 47. Penny's heart sank. "That's me. I should go. They're strict about boarding times after delays." They walked toward her gate in silence, the bustling airport suddenly feeling like an obstacle course of goodbye. At the security checkpoint where they would have to part, Penny turned to face him. "I don't know what this is," she said honestly. "I just know that talking to you for one day felt more genuine than most connections I've made in years." "Then, let's not overthink it," Gabe replied. He pulled out his phone. "Your number, just in case you want to hear about revolutionary developments in octopus research." Penny smiled despite herself and recited her number, watching as he entered it. "I'll text you," he promised. "So you have mine too. Final call for American Airlines Flight 372 to New York at Gate 47. "I have to go," Penny said, suddenly frantic. The moment felt too important for such an abrupt ending. Gabe nodded, then surprised her by leaning forward and kissing her cheek. "Safe travels, Penelope Winters. Thank you for making a terrible delay into something I'll never forget." She wanted to say something meaningful, something that captured the strange magic of their shared hours, but all the words felt inadequate. Instead, she did something completely uncharacteristic. She pulled him close and kissed him properly, briefly but with unmistakable intent. "In case that wasn't clear," she said as she pulled away, "I'd like to hear about those octopuses." His smile was dazzling. Message received. With one last look, Penny turned and hurried through security, her heart racing with a mixture of panic and exhilaration. As she joined the boarding line, her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. The airport delay was just the beginning. The real adventure starts now. For the first time in years, as Penny settled into her seat and the plane prepared for takeoff, she wasn't thinking about deadlines or her next assignment. Instead, she was wondering about connecting flights to Boston, the research season in the Algarve, and whether some disruptions might actually be the universe's way of putting you exactly where you needed to be. Arrivals and departures. 3 months. After Lisbon, Penny stood in her New York apartment surrounded by photographs. Her exhibition was opening in 2 days and she was making final selections. Her editor, Judith, circled the display with narrowed eyes. "These new ones are different," Judith observed, stopping before a series Penny had taken in Maine. "There's something, I don't know. They feel more intimate." Penny smiled slightly. The photographs showed the coast at dawn, fishing boats, morning mist, and in one, the silhouette of a man examining tide pools. "I had a good guide." Her phone vibrated on the counter. Gabe's name appeared on the screen along with a photo of a peculiar spiral-shaped shell. "Found this on today's dive. Reminded me of that pattern in your hair when you fell asleep in the airport. 3 more days until Boston." Their relationship had developed in fits and starts since Lisbon. Text messages became phone calls, which became video chats that lasted until dawn. 6 weeks after their airport meeting, Penny had taken an assignment in New England that coincidentally put her an hour from Boston. Their reunion had been both awkward and wonderful, strangers who weren't strangers discovering that their connection hadn't been merely a product of airport delirium. Now they were attempting the impossible, maintaining a relationship between her apartment in New York and his research position in Boston, with frequent interruptions as their work sent them to opposite ends of the earth. "Earth to Penny," Judith said, waving a hand. "I asked if you're still planning to take that National Geographic assignment in Australia." "Oh," Penny hesitated. The 6-month project documenting coral reef restoration had been her dream assignment. "I'm reconsidering." Judith raised an eyebrow. "Because of the marine biologist?" "Partly," Penny admitted, "but also because I'm wondering if it's time for a change. I've been thinking about more focused projects, maybe a book." The truth was more complicated. Her conversations with Gabe had awakened something she'd been suppressing, a longing for roots, for deeper connections to places and people. The constant travel that had once felt like freedom now sometimes seemed like running. "Well, don't decide today," Judith advised. "Let's get through this exhibition first." After Judith left, Penny returned to her photographs, but her mind kept drifting to Gabe. Their relationship existed in a series of intense weekends and video calls, punctuated by long absences. Just 2 weeks ago, he'd been incommunicado for 4 days while on a research vessel with no satellite connection. She'd found herself pacing her apartment, wondering if this fragile thing between them could possibly last. Her phone rang. Gabe again. "Hey," she answered, smiling despite her doubts. "Bad news," he said without preamble. "The Institute needs me in Florida next weekend, some emergency with the coral samples. I won't make your exhibition." Penny's heart sank. She'd been looking forward to showing him her work, to introducing him to her New York world. "I understand," she said, trying to keep disappointment from her voice. "I'm really sorry, Penny. I know how important this is. It's okay, really." She forced brightness into her tone. "Your work matters too." After they hung up, Penny stared at the photographs on her wall. This was the reality of loving someone whose life was as nomadic and unpredictable as her own. Maybe they had been foolish to think it could work. 2 days later, Penny stood in the gallery surrounded by admirers and critics. The exhibition was a success. Her photographs of coastal communities resonated with the viewers, who praised her eye for capturing human connection amid natural beauty. "That's because she's finally experiencing it herself," Judith whispered, nudging her as another glowing review came in. Penny smiled politely, but her joy felt incomplete. She kept glancing toward the door, irrationally hoping that Gabe would somehow appear despite being thousands of miles away. As the evening wound down, she found herself before the photograph of the man by the tide pools. Gabe, though none of the attendees would know that. It had been taken during their weekend in Maine when he'd shown her his favorite research spots along the coast. "I particularly like this one," said a voice behind her, "though I think the subject could have combed his hair." Penny froze, then spun around. Gabe stood there, wearing a suit that looked newly purchased, his curly hair still slightly damp as if he'd rushed from somewhere. "What?" she began but couldn't find words. "How? I lied about Florida," he admitted. "I had something else to take care of." He looked nervous, running a hand through his hair. "I've been doing a lot of thinking." "So have I," Penny said, finding her voice. "About us, about the future. And I turned down the Australia assignment." Gabe's eyes widened. "Penny, that was your dream project." "Dreams change," she said simply. "I realized I don't want to just document communities anymore. I want to be part of one, with roots, with connections." She took a deep breath. "With you, if that's still an option." Slow smile spread across his face. "That's funny because I came here to tell you I turned down the permanent position at the Institute." "What?" "Gabe, no. Let me finish," he said, taking her hands. "I turned it down because I found something better. The Oceanographic Center in Woods Hole is starting a new public education initiative. They need someone who can communicate marine science to the public through visual storytelling." His eyes shone with excitement. "It's a joint position with National Geographic. I told them I knew the perfect photographer to partner with." Penny stared at him, processing his words. "You're saying—" "I'm saying they're offering us both jobs, based in Massachusetts but with field work around the world. Together." He squeezed her hands. "We'd still travel, but we'd have a home base. Roots, like you said." The gallery seemed to fade around them as Penny absorbed the possibility. Work she cared about, the adventure she craved, but also stability, connection, and Gabe. "When did you arrange all this?" she asked, amazed. "Remember when I disappeared for 4 days? I wasn't just on a research vessel. I was in Washington meeting with the National Geographic team." He looked suddenly uncertain. "Is it too much? Too soon? We've only really known each other a few months." Penny laughed, a sound of pure joy. "We met because of a delayed flight. I think we've established that our timing is unconventional." She pulled him close, unconcerned about the few remaining gallery patrons watching them. "So," Gabe whispered against her hair, "is that a yes?" "It's a yes," Penny confirmed. "Though I have one condition." "Anything." "Our first assignment together has to be in Lisbon." I think we owe that airport a proper thank you. Gabe laughed, the sound warming her heart. I was thinking the same thing. Maybe we could even get deliberately delayed. As they left the gallery hand in hand, stepping into the New York night that now felt full of possibility, Penny thought about how perfectly the title of her exhibition captured their story. Unexpected detours. Some journeys weren't about the destination at all, but about who you met along the way, and how a single delayed flight could change the trajectory of two lives forever.